Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everyone, welcome to today's presentation, which is on Surah Ibrahim, chapter 14. And we will cover verses 42 to that is the end of Surah Ibrahim. And because one is that we are covering all the rest of the verses. And also there is a verse on Law of Requital, so it will be slightly longer than the normal. These are the references. And this is our contact. In references, it will help if we want to explore more the side of Law of Requital, the book, The Life in the Hereafter, What Does the Quran Say, by Allama Pervez could be very helpful. First, let us go through what we have covered so far in this surah. Everything in the universe follows Allah's laws, and the darknesses which exist in the human world can be removed by using the light of the Quran. What is in the Quranic guidance can be verified through historical evidences. For example, the account of Bani Israel and their struggle with the tyrannical regime of Pharaoh. Even we can relate to what is going on right in front of us in today's world. The messengers who brought Allah's revelation were themselves human beings, and together with their companions, they followed the permanent values and managed to reap the benefits as noted in the Quran. And they reap these benefits right in this life. They didn't leave it to the hereafter. Human desires and intellect, which are devoid of the light of the Wahy of Allah, are equivalent to Iblis and Shaitan, and cannot create a world free from fear and huzn. Leaders and nations who follow the evil ideology of life ultimately take their populations towards destruction through their own deeds. This is as per the law of requital of Allah. There are enough signs in the outer world and within the human psyche which can draw our attention towards exploration of the purpose of our existence as a human being. Next is those who wish to follow the path of Allah, which leads towards the system of Deen, become His companions. And Allah has declared them to be His servants. This aspect is covered in detail throughout the Quran. It is our choice whether we wish to become His companions or not. And since we have come to the Quran, that is the way we should think. Because if there is a lack of conviction within our heart, then we will always remain in doubt. We will remain suspicious. And the best way is to check our own conduct and behavior and thought process by using the Quranic criteria. The messenger Ibrahim submitted to the guidance of the Wahy of Allah, and he devoted himself together with his progeny and companions to the cause of Deen. Two of these verses I've covered in this slide. Verse 14, 42-43. Human thoughts and deeds lead to consequences both cognitively and physically. The first one is وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ مُهْطِعِينَ مُقْنِعِي رُءُوسِهِمْ لَا يَرْتَدُّ عَلَيْهِمْ طَرْفُهُمْ وَأَفْئِدَتُهُمْ هَوَاءٌ. With these wishes and supplications commence this system, for the completion of which, O Rasool, you have now risen up. So this is in reference to the conduct and the model of Hazrat Ibrahim. Therefore, do not think that we are unaware of whatever these unjust and rebellious people are doing. That is, our Law of Requital is witnessing all. But this is a time of respite. When the time for the manifestation of consequences arrives, then seeing the destruction becoming unveiled before them, their eyes will remain staring, their eyeballs will pop out. So over here, Quran has said that Allah is not unaware of what is going on in His world. In fact, He is with everyone. That's why Quran says that you can't say that He has detached Himself from this world. The only thing is, if we don't see the immediate consequences of people's actions and deeds, it is because there is a law of respite working, that we are given a certain period of respite before these deeds manifest themselves. The effects of those deeds are immediate. It is only their visible effects show up a bit later. The chaos will be such that they will be running around senselessly without looking around. All will leave their companionship, so much so that their gaze will not return to their own selves. Their hearts will become devoid of hope. Emotions of despair will engulf them severely. So Quran has drawn our attention to the effects both internally, that is within our psyche, and outside in the world when our bad deeds show up. Now, recognizing the time of respite. I've gone through some of the points which are related to the time of respite as mentioned in verse 42. Here the Quran has provided guidance to us that when the system of deen does not exist anywhere, it means we are going through the period of respite. How do we recognize this period of respite? Some people who are particularly the students of the Quran at an initial stages, they do express their despair that why Allah is not taking action immediately and how the world is functioning. Some attribute it to Qismat. Some say, oh, it is because of our deeds that these natural disasters are causing so much havoc. All these aspects have been covered in the Quran, that we have to study them in relation to the way human beings function in this world. Firstly, by understanding the law of respite and the need for it in the functioning of human choice and intent, the correct choices in life can only be made in light of the Quranic guidance. Hence, other choices made out with the guidance need to be given respite so that people can reflect on the wrong outcomes and then decide whether to keep pursuing the same path of error or to think of changing their path. And we have gone through this aspect. For example, in Surah Nahl, Quran says that in case everyone was to meet the consequences of their deeds immediately, then there will not be much left on this earth. Human beings probably will disappear. But there is a time of respite kept there purposely so that people can make mistakes and then they learn and they might mend their ways. Secondly, the duration of respite is far longer in the case of nations, but finite as well. That is, the nations do take quite long time, maybe many centuries before they start declining. And if there is no other nation which stands up against them, then obviously this time of respite will prolong as well. Whereas individuals born within these nation states have a shorter life. That is, we have a shorter life as compared to these nations. So it should be our concern to look into it very objectively as well as subjectively so that we can benefit from this time of respite. But there are enough signs for them to question their existence and its purpose and then to look for alternatives in their life. We need to keep in mind that if questions do not arise in our minds and hearts and we just conform to the system, then duration of this time of respite is meaningless for us. Because if we are not aware of the guidance of the Quran in the first place, and we do not know the functioning of the law of requital, and we just live life by conforming to the value system in which we are born, and which is a man-devised system, then how are we going to come to making efforts to know the time of respite for us? So this is the point I'm trying to make over here. Thirdly, the consequences of following the wrong path of our life, termed as darknesses at the start of this surah, will ultimately manifest in the later part of our life, or the later part of a nation's demise, and then it will be too late. So this is the important point, that knowing that there is a time of respite, and these nations are going through that time of respite, we can, from the circumstances, environment, and the effects, and the way these nations are behaving in the world, we can figure out whether they have a long to before their decline starts or they have a shorter time. But in our own case, we in any case know that death will end our stay in this world. So our time of respite is far shorter. In the case of an individual, those on the wrong path, whether they admit it or not, fall into the grip of futility of their past life, that he regrets, disappointments, fear, despair. And this is important. If we read some of the books of people who express their thoughts before, shortly before they left this world, you will see that a lot of them feel that their living, their life, whatever they did was pretty aimless. And why these feelings? Because they do not have any external criteria to check what they did was good or bad. Whereas we have the criterion of the Quran where we can judge ourselves. And second is that if we are making efforts towards the system of deen, we will know exactly where we are vis-a-vis establishing that system of deed. Verse 1444, we are in this world with an expiry date on our physical existence. We cannot escape the effects of our deeds. وَأَنذِرِ النَّاسَ يَوْمَ يَأْتِيهِمُ الْعَذَابُ فَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا رَبَّنَا أَخِّرْنَا إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ قَرِيبٍ نُجِبْ دَعْوَتَكَ وَنَتَّبِعِ الرُّسُلَ أَوَلَمْ تَكُونُوا أَقْسَمْتُم مِّن قَبْلُ مَا لَكُم مِّن زَوَالٍ. O Rasool, make these opponents aware of the severe punishment of this kind of awful destruction. So here the Quran has given a warning. At that time, these unjust and tyrannical people will implore profusely, O our Rabb, give us just a little respite so that we may accept your guidance and will follow your messenger. And this seems to be the state once the messengers have given the message to these people. They will be told that before this time you used to swear repeatedly that there can be no decline in our powers. Now witness what decline is and how does it arrive. Now some further reflections on this verse. First is, as we know, the Quran draws our direction to those unseen realities which only manifest before our eyes, minds and hearts when we seek guidance and then explore al-haq as explained in its pages. Here we are asked to warn mankind to take our existence as human beings seriously and not to think that what we do will not have consequences. And as we have discussed previously as well, that by giving warnings to others, actually we are strengthening our own iman in Allah's guidance. What is this warning with which we need to caution others? The fact that if the path of our life is wrong, then it is bound to produce wrong results at some point in time in the future. Here we are asked to appeal to our inner self and imagine the consequences with which we will be confronted when the outcomes of our deeds all accumulate and appear before us as physical signs, as well as emerging on ourselves as regrets, disappointments, fear multiplied, despair, a sense of loss and futility of our existence. I put down some of my thoughts over here. We can always add more items to this list. Because human thinking is very complex and we have to come to terms with that, and Quran helps us to come to terms with our own consciousness. We need to observe this process of respite and accountability around us at individual and collective levels so that our iman in the Quran keeps gaining strength. When human beings land into trouble due to their own follies or due to the evils of the man-devised systems, then if they had never before thought about it, we witness that they become despondent and cry for help even from those who had warned them about this wrong path of theirs. This is very interesting, and I have also observed it, that people to whom some of the people around us, when we give them the message, they reject it or they turn their faces away and say, we don't want it, or we don't want to hear about it, or resist it. But the same people, when land up in trouble, they come back to you and say, oh, you are a very wise man, could you guide us? And this is very interesting, that they don't try to add 2 plus 2, that these are the people who had warned us. And since they have forgotten about that warning, they will come back and say, could you give us an advice on this problem which I'm facing? And you stand over there, or we stand over there, and we say, if you had listened to our advice at that point, you wouldn't have been in this thick if you had listened to it. And now you are in this thick, and now and since you have forgotten, you have come back to the same person who had admonished you regarding this. Even if such people get some respite in the physical domain, the effect on their selves is not going to disappear. This point merits our profound reflection. That one thing we should keep it in mind is that even if we get the bad consequences of our deeds in this life, this is not the end of it, because our self is working independent of ourself when we take into account the hereafter. So whatever we do is going to have an indelible imprint on ourself. And that is the point we need to keep it in mind and pass it on to others. 1445, in order to recognize injustice around us, we need to question its causes. وَسَكَنْتُمْ فِي مَسَاكِنِ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ كَيْفَ فَعَلْنَا بِهِمْ وَضَرَبْنَا لَكُمُ الْأَمْثَالَ. You had inhabited the places of these people who had done injustice to themselves. Now, this could be addressing us. It could also be those people who are doing injustice or do not want to come to the Quran. We had informed you about their circumstances so that you come to know what our law of requital does to these kinds of people. Furthermore, with many different examples, we had made the truth explicit to you. This is a very interesting point that we are, for example, in 2022, are occupying this earth after the previous generations have left. If we look back, let's say 200 years ago, there were totally different set of peoples who are living on this planet. And another 100 years, 200 years, there will be exactly new generations occupying this earth. And we should try to look at our place over here. That is, in terms of time, we are appearing here for a very short finite slot of time. And in that finite slot of time, we have the opportunity to create an eternal abode for us in the hereafter. The world around us has enough signs to prove that the Quran is al-Haq. This is with more reflections on verse 45. Our attention is drawn to this fact that we are successors of former generations, and in the not too distant future, there will be others who will succeed us on earth. Each one of us with a self is a complete entity with its own sense of being and its own indivisible identity. Here the Quran has drawn our attention at the self's level by noting Masakin al-Lazina Zalamu Anfusahum. Those who lived here who did injustice to themselves. So this is an important point for us, that we are not the ones who are included in that. Those who have come to the Quran, they recognize what is zulm and they avoid it. This is important for us because this gives us reassurance, because we can then differentiate between two entities. What wrong did they do to themselves? Let us compare their conduct with the models of Yusuf and Ibrahim. I thought we have gone through these two models in fair amount of detail, so we should look at that. They were also human beings. Why did they make different choices from these people who do injustice on Allah's earth and create a world full of fear and grief? And that is something which is very instructive for us, that why do these people behave differently than us who have come to the Quran? For example, the model of Ibrahim and Yusuf is not only for each one of us, it is also to compare the conduct of others around us. Now comes an important aspect of instruction for the students of the Quran. Why did the Quran state that تَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ كَيْفَ فَعَلْنَا بِهِمْ? We were made evidently clear how we dealt with them. So what happened to them, we should look into it, not only in the fact that they died and disappeared forever as far as this life is concerned, but what they did, they also, some of those facts are recorded in the history. Firstly, there is no exception here for anyone. Secondly, what happened to them was due to their own deeds. So let this reality sink into your hearts and minds. This is what the Quran is saying. Thirdly, keep reminding everyone around by drawing their attention to their unbridled conduct based on the evidence of their deeds. Fourthly, pay attention to their deeds and their impacts on the world around you. Next is, these examples are noted here to make our life easier so that we can let others know that this is what the Quran declares. So these examples are not given by the Quran to make us even more worried and stressed. These are the explanation of what is happening around us in a man-device system and how it will transform into a different world once we have the system of deed. Refer them to it, saying this is what the Quran states, not what I think or we believe, and this is the book from Allah. So this is another important point which I have noted over here, is that when we pass on the message, we say this is from the book of Allah, and we should quote verses as well. And we can, in fact, if they have time, you can make them sit, give them a copy of the Quran and take them to relevant pages and tell them to read it themselves. I have done it, and people become speechless. They have no answer to those. For example, the verse 45:22 says that everyone is accountable. And they keep quiet and they walk away. And that is important, that we should not say this is what I think or we believe. Just refer them to the book of Allah. In that way, it will increase our knowledge, our conviction, as well as we will pass on the message to others. Verse 46, All human activities under man-devised systems need to be objectively analyzed. Very interesting verse over here. وَقَدْ مَكَرُوا مَكْرَهُمْ وَعِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَكْرُهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ مَكْرُهُمْ لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالُ. We also informed you about this, that these people carried out various trickeries in opposition to the system of Allah. Such plots by which even the mountains would have been shaken from their places. But none of their plots were able to be successful before our law of requital. Now, what I've done is, now this is the meaning, above is the meaning from Mafhum al-Quran by Allama Pervez, and here I have thought just to share the translation as well. Mighty indeed were the plots which they made, but their plots were within the sight of Allah, even though they were such as shake the mountains. This is interesting because the word makar is used over here, and it could be for negative, can have a negative as well as positive connotation. It is in relation to planning or plotting. If people are plotting and wish to do some evil thing, then this is from those who go against the guidance of the Quran. And over here, Allah has said that the system of law of requital works in such a way that nothing escapes its grasp. It's only the law of respite which provides some kind of a respite, some kind of intervening period in which if people wish to come back and start doing good, then they will be able to overcome some of the mistakes of the past. Otherwise, nothing escapes the law of requital. Further reflections on this verse 46, regarding those who reject the guidance of Allah, why do they then plot against those who choose to follow the path of the Quran? I put down these comments because people who are on the path of the Quran, they never mean any harm to anyone. All they say is that the path followed by those people who do wrong and which is against the Quran is causing problems to everyone. And these problems will also be caused to these people themselves at some later stage because they cannot escape it. And they still, because they don't want to give up their path and give up their desires, so they get against us or against those people who follow the Quran and vehemently oppose this. This is something which needs our profound attention. Why do they view this guidance and those who follow it as a threat for them? And this is something very important to which we should come to grips over a period of time. It's not easy. It is not straightforward. We have to keep thinking over it and keep talking to various people and passing on the message. And through their reaction, we will come to this conclusion one day that why do they oppose it? Because it goes against their desires. We have already seen that the opponents of Allah wish to deport or kill or stone to death or imprison or somehow silence them. And we have seen it that in these verses that they used to threaten the messengers of Allah that we will throw you out of this land as if the word belongs to them, and they wanted to stone them to death. What is the crime of these followers of the guidance of Allah? If we remember what the Malaika said in verse 230, قَالُوا وَتَجَلُوا فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. And this is the default position to which Quran has drawn our attention, that when people follow their unbridled desires, the desires which are not guided by the light of Wahi, they will behave the way they are behaving right in front of us. Then you place therein one who will create fasad and shed blood. Fasad means chaos, conflicts, every negative connotation fasad has. And of course, out of this fasad comes shedding of blood. I.e., they are meant to do this in the world. Why do we get surprised? We get surprised because when we do not fully come to grips with the Quranic verses and do not try to see the whole context of the Quran. And that is something which we need to understand. In today's world, we can see effective control of the world is in the hands of those who are pursuing their own agenda based on relative values, and the effects of these actions of theirs are evidently visible across the globe. Even without using the lens of the Quran, rational thinkers are pointing their attention to these evil doings. And these points are not only that we can pick up by coming to the Quran. If I put my finger in the fire and it burns, I don't need the guidance of the Quran to know why the fire has burnt my finger. In the human world, there are certain effects, certain problems like wars, conflicts, and conspiracies or intrigues or regime changes, which are visible to anyone who is affected by these adverse changes in the world. So it is not something we cannot understand. We definitely need the Quran to understand it. We need the Quran to know the reasons of why human beings do it to others. Why do they ignore these warnings? This is because power without the light of Wahi intoxicates human minds, and desire for the acquisition of power is part of the makeup of the human psyche. And this is something we should keep in mind, that human beings wish to acquire power. This is kept within us. And the issue is, how do we use that power once we have that power? The hikmat, which is wisdom, that is the way we should use power within the permanent values. To use this acquired power is only available via the Quran. That is why Allah's attribute of hikmat, Hakim, comes with Aziz. Without it, we will always see the abuse of power, and the Quran points our attention to this fact repeatedly. For example, Pharaoh is presented as an example of this unbridled power. We can witness it with our own eyes in today's world. Now, continuing with more reflections, those who acquire power think that this power cannot be taken away when viewed in light of the circumstances around them. The Quran has firstly directed our attention to the fact of our physical death. And it's very surprising, those people who wield this power and become very tyrannical, they don't understand, they do not want to reflect on this fact that they are going to die one day. And a lot of them have some kind of quasi-religious beliefs as well. And in all religions, there is some kind of accountability included in their own way. That comes to every human being and is built into the constitution of our physical body and is placed beyond our control. When it comes, all our associated power disappears. And we have seen that even when Pharaoh was getting drowned, he said that now I have Iman, and which is of no use to him. Why did he say that? Because underneath there was some kind of feeling that he is doing wrong to other people. We have seen that all dynasties disappear with the death of human beings and new generations take over. We become deceived because of the absence of the guidance of Wahi. Otherwise, the Quran draws our attention to this fact that our stay in this world is finite and that there is a far bigger world of the hereafter created for us if we choose to work for it in this life. We need not live life under fear and grief, provided that we decide to live within the guidance of the Quran. The next point is then it warns repeatedly that the law of requital does not spare any human deed, and we need to remain aware of this law all the time. There are nations before us who had lived here and thought that decline will never be their fate. And even the nations today which are powerful, even the people who are in position of power do not think that the decline will come in their direction. However, the potentials of destruction were concealed within their very mode of conduct when they decided to go against the divine order in the universe. For example, each one of us, many of us human beings, they suffer from cancer, and this cancer doesn't come from outside, it grows within us. Their technology, skyscrapers, gigantic structures, criminal ploys against humanity, etc., could not prevent their death, and out of their ashes, new generations arose. They disappeared as if they had never existed on the earth, leaving behind only the signs of their ruins for future generations. Next verse is 1447. When we strive towards a system of deen, then things commence to shape up. فَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ مُخْلِفَ وَعْدِهِ رُسُلَهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ ذُو انتقام يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ وَبَرَزُوا لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ. Hence, you should not remain in this delusion of yours that Allah will go against His commitments. So this is important, that if we follow the book of Allah and stick to it and keep strengthening ourselves for the system of deen, Allah will never go against His commitment. That is, He will fulfill His promises which are noted in the Quran. Every commitment of His will definitely be fulfilled to His messengers who have brought this message. And now, messengers are not going to come, and we essentially when we come to the Quran, then we have to pass on the message to others. This is because he is the possessor of supreme powers, and according to his law of requital, every wrong deed is surely punished. No one can run away anywhere from it. And over here, Quran has noted two attributes, Aziz and Zuntiqam. Aziz means he is powerful. Zuntiqam means, normally it is translated as revengeful. Now over here, what it means is that the law of requital is pursued and there is enough power behind it to get the results out of human deeds. Next one is, O Rasool, say to them that through this invitation of mine, such a revolution will come that this earth will become another earth, the sky will be a different sky. And these are beautiful words, Yawma tubaddalul ardu ghayral ardi. Of course, it will be a different earth, it will be a different world where the system of deen will emerge and will emerge with all its brightness. This earth and sky will transform in place of the present society. A new society will emerge. Even the thought of it makes, and one becomes optimistic. And all the people will appear before Allah clearly and distinctly, in front of whose law no one else's law can operate, and who is possessor of supreme powers and control. And that is where we will recognize and we will find out how much freedom we have in this world as human beings. Next are verses 47 and 48. Nothing is imprecise in the universe. That is how we need to look at the world and our life. If we understand the laws and the way Allah's Mashiach function in the human world, then we acquire conviction that the promise of Allah as referred here gets fulfilled. Here reassurance is provided to counter any doubts and suspicions arising in human hearts and minds that perhaps our efforts will go wasted. The way the whole system of the creation is organized, every deed keeps producing its results. On small steps, if we see law of requital working right in our own life as well, that provides us reassurance as we keep living our life and keep following the permanent values to the best of our ability within the constraints of the man-made system. Two divine attributes are noted over here, Aziz and Zuntiqam, point to the fact that there is enough power behind the carrying out of these laws and that it is organized in such a way that evil cannot go unpunished. That's very reassuring, that nothing can go unpunished. There is a time of respite, and that time of respite, at the end of that time of respite, the results will manifest themselves. The criminals will be punished because of their own deeds. The human self is affected by our deeds. However, if there is no system of deen, then as far as this world is concerned, many nations will have a long time of respite if these are very powerful. Next is the Quran has stated, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. I've taken this verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, and over here the Quran says, here Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen is asked to witness the conduct of others using the message of the Quran. Because over here Quran says that once the deen is established, and Quran, Allah has related to himself, as in many other verses, that this ummah has come into this existence and which is very balanced. Wasatan, litakunu shuhada. Why they have come into existence? Why they have made efforts to come into the world? Because now they will become witness on the deeds of others. And of course, their own deeds are being controlled, being guided by the Quran itself. Wayakuna Rasool, of course, at that time, the messenger of Allah was there to look at their deeds, that is of Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. But now it will be Quran and Allah himself. And that is the way we should view it. Alaykum Shahida. And they have to make sure that what is going on in the world is following the path of justice as defined by the Quran. And of course, they themselves are sticking to the message of Allah. There needs to be a system which overlooks human affairs across the world. Presently, this is being carried out by the UNO, and we know that how faulty it is and how much injustice is meted out of, and UNO is essentially doing nothing. Of course, it is biased towards the most powerful. However, the Quran here provides certainty for the efforts of those who strive on this path by coming together, and tells them in clear terms that the creation of the universe is haq, and the system of deen has the potential to become shaped. And that is why Quran says هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. So this is a reassurance to people who have come to the Quran that this deen of Allah, that is al-haq, and will show up in the world if we keep moving forward and keep making efforts. And of course, the first stage is to stay together. The outcome will depend on the strength of our iman and joint efforts. The two divine attributes, Al-Wahid al-Qahar, which is at the end of verse 48, point to this fact that Tawheed, which is Wahid, and mighty unwavering power behind it, which is Al-Qahar, it is available to the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin all the time. These attributes are very important because one is that we should look at them from Allah's point of view and also look at them from our own point of view, that these should become part of our own understanding of ourselves so that we have to act on them once the system of deen is established. Now next is verses 49-50, recognizing criminals is part of our self-development process. وَتَرَى الْمُجْرِمِينَ يَوْمَئِذٍ مُقَرَّنِينَ فِي الْأَصْفَادِ سَرَابِيلُهُم مِّن قَطِرَانٍ وَتَغْشَى وُجُوهَهُمُ النَّارُ. On that day you will see these criminals who are championing transgression like this at this time will be like prisoners of war being shackled in chains. Their armor, which they had worn for their protection by sticking to their bodies like molten tar, will become a castigation in their life. Their faces will be scorched from the flames of fire. Now, these two verses point to the fact that once the system gets established, or there is a clear justice in the world, then those who deliberately go against Allah's laws, then of course they have to be punished. They have to be given an opportunity to reform themselves as well. And over here, the comments are, these verses throw light on the state of those who oppose haqq, not a pretty scene. This can be literal or metaphorical. However, the humiliation of failure as a consequence of supporting batil is devastating, because this devastation is at two ends. One is that all the efforts which people made against the system of deen, that went astray, that failed. And second is, for the rest of their life, if they don't come to the guidance of the Quran, they will live a life of frustration, and then of course there is nothing for them in the hereafter. The Quran has drawn a vivid picture of this condition of those who ultimately leave this life without a self in many other places. 1451, recognizing the effects of our thoughts and deeds on ourselves is part of striving towards deen. لِيَجْزِيَ اللَّهُ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. All this will take place in order that, according to the law of requital of Allah, every individual can be recompensed for the actions he has carried out. The reality is that his law does not delay even a moment in the accountability of deeds. It happens to be very swift. If we look at the Quran right from beginning to the end, in some ways Quran is referring to the law of requital. And over here, this verse, I thought we should go into some more aspects which have come before us in the light of going through these three surahs, which is Surah Yusuf and Surah Ra'd and Surah Ibraheem. Now, first is root of kasabat, which is used and normally translated as what people do, what are their deeds. And this is the root. The original meaning of this is to collect. After this, it also has the meaning of searching for means of sustenance and to acquire something and to find it. It also means to do or to accumulate imbalances. Raghav has noted that kasab is to do such work which man will do for the good of his own self and together with this for the benefit of others. So this is important, something on which I have put some emphasis. While iktisab is for doing such a deed in which man only keeps his own benefit before him. It's worth looking at this verse where both words kasab and iktisab have appeared. Another lugat has also noted that kasab is used for good and iktisab is for evil. And this is very interesting, that if we take these two meanings, of course the context is important in which these have appeared in the Quran. However, Allama Pervez has noted that this is not a rule, as it is also used contrary to this in the Quran. Some basic points. The Quran has drawn our attention towards the phenomenon of precise human accountability at numerous places and has declared that each self is accountable for its deeds. Wherever there are problems in the world, there is always a human hand behind it, and wherever the problems become resolved, it is due to human efforts. The existence and functioning of the law of requital invites us to think hard about the events occurring in the world at an individual and collective level, and to then analyze the psyche behind these events. And this is important for us, that wherever there are deeds, we should try to look at what made these people do like that, what was the thought behind it. And that helps to understand the Quran much better than just going over it mechanically. The Quran has made it very clear that Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, that Allah does not change the state of a nation until they change what is within their own self, what is within their own ignition, how their psyche has been formed. And of course, psyche is not formed in one day. The human world is the product of their psyche. The Quran invites the psyche to change its own condition. Further reflections. The verse has two parts. Firstly, it says, لِيَجْزِيَ كُلَّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ, so that Allah with all His attributes ensures that each and every self is recompensed for its deeds or whatever it does in his or her life in this world. So important point over here is that we should keep it in mind that these verses like this, I quoted a few more as well. So they start with Allah, with all His attributes. That means when we are also looking at the world and we are looking at our own self, we should look at our own self in the light of those divine attributes which are applicable to our finite existence. If we become aware of the functioning of the law of requital later in our life, then we will have less time to benefit from this knowledge, assuming we act on it. Hence, it is important to make children aware of it as early as possible in their lives. So that is important, that if we have come to grips with this, that whatever we do has an effect on us, and it is going to have an effect the way we live our life, and how do we live this life at the time of death. So all these factors should be kept in mind, and this is how we should make our children aware as well. Secondly, if we take the meaning of kasabat as explained under its root as that deed which produces a good outcome, then an important issue arises here. And this is something very important for us to look into it. Every nafs will be recompensed for its good deeds. So if we say kullu nafsin bima kasabat, those we will be recompensed for good deeds, and which takes into account the hereafter as well, i.e. it will leave that effect on the human self which will have the ability to rise and provide eminence to it. And that is important, that the deeds, the solid deeds as the Quran says after Iman, that means that our potentials will keep coming out and we will be aware of those potentials being displayed in our life. Other deeds will cause the self to deteriorate and will have no weight in the divine balance. It's worth having a look on this verse which I quoted over here. However, as far as this world is concerned, all deeds contribute to its shape and form. So if we are taking into account the hereafter, then this kasabat over here means far more than just keeping our life confined to this world only. The second part of the verse, Inna Allaha Sariul Hisab, points to the immediate imprint of our deed after it is performed. Sariul Hisab means very quick, that Allah is very quick in accountability, which means that the moment a deed is committed, its effect at the same time simultaneously is imprinted on ourselves. This means that this system of accountability includes all the attributes of Allah for its functioning. See, Allah over here again, so all attributes will come into it. So in a system of being, all these divine attributes will be applicable, and those who are running the affairs of the system of being, they have to manifest all these attributes in their self. Hence, we need to endeavor to manifest as many of the divine attributes in ourselves as possible in order to fully grasp our psyche and its connection with our choices, decision making, and their outcomes. The point over here is that all these things we have to do it willingly. It is not something which is a burden on us. If it is considered as a burden and we take it as mechanically, then we are not going to benefit from it. Because self only benefits what it strives for willingly and happily. And the path which we have selected and we have made a choice is a path which is not going to end with our death. And that is something which should keep providing reassurance to each one of us. Few more verses on the subject. خلق الله السماوات والأرض بالحق ولتجزى كل نفس بما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون. And this verse has added 2 points in this, different from the previous one. First is خلق الله السماوات والأرض بالحق, that Allah again with all his attributes has created heaven and the earth as bilhaq. It is not for play and amusement. So that each nafs, exactly the same kasabat, whatever they do, they are recompensed, and system is so precise, so accurate that nobody can be treated unjustly, and that is how the system of deen should be, that no one is treated unjustly in that system. Don't they know that Allah has created this whole universe as bil-haq, not meaningless and not for destructive effects? The aim of it is that the outcome of deeds of every person is established precisely and no injustice is done to anyone. This whole system of the universe is busy functioning so that every deed of every person produces the correct outcome. The next verse is very interesting and very powerful as well. وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لِلنَّاسِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. The Quran says, just see how we describe every kind of example in different ways, so that people don't get bored and they look at different aspects of what Quran is putting forward before us. And not only in physical sense, but cognitively as well, so that everything becomes clear from every aspect. But despite this, the state of man is such that he is often contentious. And why they are contentious? Because their inner self is not accepting what is in the Quran, because some of these things, they go against their inner desires, their own emotions, their own intellect, and that is why they become contentious. Otherwise, if we are willing and we are looking for guidance of the Quran, there is nothing contentious in that. And another verse is liman sha'a minkum an yataqaddama aw yata'akhkhara. It will help to see the verses and their background, the verses before it, the 36 verses before this 37th verse. Whoever wishes can go forward and whoever wishes can remain behind. So this word is created in a way that if we struggle hard and we only look for the benefits of this life, then we will get the benefits of this life, whatever this man-made system allows us. But if we strive hard on the path of Allah, then development of the self, whether one is poor or rich, it doesn't make any difference. Their development of the self is placed beyond the reach of man-devised systems. The only thing is that one should be looking for the guidance and someone should have given the message as well. So ideally, we should give the message to whole of the world at some point in time. كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ رَهِينَةً. And again, Quran has stated another fact. Every self is tied in pledge for his very own deeds. That is why Quran says on the day of judgment, nobody will complain that injustice has been done to him or her. And next is another very powerful verse, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wal tanzur nafsum ma qaddamat ligad. And the Mate Mu'mineen is addressed over here. Always keep it in mind that to be muttaqi. And we know the term muttaqi includes everything as a movement. And again, Allah has come over here with all his attributes. That is, muttaqi is the one who is manifesting Allah's attributes within its finite limits. Means that every one of you should remain conscious of this fact about what he has sent forward for his tomorrow. See how high level of consciousness the Quran is asking us to have, so that we every moment, for example, even this presentation which we are sharing together, we should be continuously be aware what we are sharing and how it is going to impact on myself. And next week and the following week and the following week, we make this accountability as part of our consciousness. Awareness of human accountability increases the expanse of understanding of the human intellect. The first point is the higher awareness of our own accountability leads to making better choices and better risk management in our life. And it is a fact. We can try it, and I'm sure we have found that it does help. By being aware of the permanent values, we remind ourselves as and when we make important decisions about their applicable value. This is part of our learning process under the law of requital. For example, if we do not refer to the relevant permanent value but are aware of the law of requital, then if the choice we make leads to a bad outcome, then at least we will revisit the list of the permanent values and look up the value which we unwittingly violated. And this is, we know that if we are aware of the law of requital all the time and still we have made certain mistakes because of the wrong system around us and the wrong results show up at some later point, we will know why these effects or these outcomes have appeared before us, and we can mend our ways. The world around us is based on the functioning of the human intellect outside of the domain of Quranic guidance. Hence, as per the law of requital, fear and greed pervades the whole globe. For example, it is in the grip of fear of pandemics, vaccination programs, global warming, economic downturns with high inflationary trends, conflicts between different states, regime changes, injustices, etc. All this is creating its effects, some visible while others are not yet visible. How will the future world shape up in both the short term and the long term? And this is something which should be at the back of our mind all the time. We should keep a very close eye on the events which are taking place in the world. If every cause has an effect in our life, then we need to figure out how the system functions within us at a cognitive level. If we start to observe the effect left behind by each of our deliberate deeds, and also look at the deliberate thought occurring before that deed, then we will notice that it becomes part of our sense of being. The more we practice and see that what thought of ours lead to or led to a certain outcome and vice versa, then we will be developing ourselves on the right lines. If this deed leads to a positive outcome, then we will refer to it again in our future conduct. If it turns out to be an error of judgment, then we will try to avoid it. Next is the manifestation of the divine attributes after learning and accepting their importance leads to enhancing our awareness about the need for the system of being. And this is automatic. I think that when we are studying the functioning of the law of requital and of course law of respite in our life and in our individual as well as collective life, we will continuously be aware of the need for being. Because the problems which are being created around us, we reach a very high awareness level and we understand the problems, the reasons behind these problems which we observe around us in the world. And in today's social media world, we are aware of these things on a continuous basis. It also provides strength to our iman of being on the straight path and motivates us to keep doing solid deeds. Our outlook becomes global rather than localized and confined to, for example, the geographical boundary of a nation state. So we have to start thinking, and we should be thinking at a global level, at a mankind level. Impediments on the path to understanding the functioning of human accountability. The assumption that our luck plays a role in our worldly success, this is supported by gambling and the chance factor in the functioning of the capitalist system. Because in that gambling and people who resort to gambling, they talk of luck playing a role because if they make more money, they say it is a good luck. And if they lose money, which is mostly the case, then it is a bad luck. This is the product of the human inclination to make quick money and take as much as possible from others by making the least amount of effort. And that is the point we should keep it in mind, that why do we have this gambling system and stock markets and the whole capital system is very, very speculative. Why? They have deliberately kept it like that because those who control the system and have inner information can benefit from it. Just see from the fluctuation of currencies how rich people become, those who have the inner information. Rich people seldom think of their accountability, hence are not likely to be attracted to the Quran. Religious belief systems prevent people from coming to the Quran. The accountability of the human self does not cross the minds and hearts of religious people and beliefs like For example, some of the beliefs are noted over here just for illustration, and for those who are going to go through this presentation on YouTube. God is mercy, God is love, God can be pleased through rituals. So all responsibilities these human beings are putting on God, and they have no responsibility. God is forgiving so that they can keep doing whatever they want. He accepts intercession, so that is the way human beings intercede and benefit and become rich on the back of poor people who do not understand the system of or the law of requital. All sins are forgiven by carrying out certain religious practices, a terrible concept, a terrible belief. And this belief is keeping nations backward. God accepts intercession of the messengers and elders, another belief which is so wrong and goes against the law of requital. The word is a sport created by God, and there are a number of other beliefs, and we can look at them by Googling it. The whole man-device system of justice is based on physical evidence, and rarely few refer to inner accountability of the self. In such a system, there are numerous escape routes even for the criminals and sinners to avoid being caught in the first place. Even when people are caught, some can escape the consequences of this system based on man-made laws. Because the man-made system does not take into account the law of requital. It says that if there is an evidence against a person and which can be proved in the court of law, wrong or right, doesn't matter. And that is why they have defense lawyers and prosecution lawyers, so that both can make money out of the system. The definition of success in this system is without any reference to the life of the hereafter. It never comes into it. Even I've seen that the people who come to the Quran, they rarely, I've never seen, in fact, other than Allama Parvez, who talks about law of requital on a continuous basis in every book of his. If something never crosses our mind, how are we going to take it into account in the affairs of our life? It revolves around material conveniences and pleasures of life. It is so far removed from the pristine concept of human eminence as presented by the Quran that many people are not even willing to give it some thought. Even those who study the Quran with a religious background do not seem to pick up the accountability factor. And this is interesting that under secular system, people are very aware of the benefits which they are getting through the capitalist system, and they defend the capitalist system to its hilt so that they can get the maximum benefit, and they don't want the capitalist system to go away because they are the beneficiary of it. And those who are not the beneficiary of it are lost in religious belief system where these kind of false beliefs play effective role. So there is no resistance. And that is why in some cases, those who are in control of the capitalist system, particularly political people, they promote fundamentalism in various parts of the world, so that human beings do not even question their injustices, and they keep quiet over it and give a blank look when their attention is drawn towards this aspect. If any student of the Quran has failed to notice the existence of the law of requital, i.e. human accountability, then he or she will fail to come to terms with deen and hence will never have a developed self. Because the self-development starts at that point where we become aware of the law of requital and start taking responsibility for our thoughts and deeds. And that is the point over here. In the world of science, despite the fact that cause and effect is accepted as a law, the minds of scientists and others do not go towards their own accountability at the level of the self. This is mainly due to not accepting that the human self has the potential to survive its physical death. Non-recognition and consequently non-acceptance of the self plays a major role in this regard. How will the law of requital and the law of respite shape the system of justice under being? I put down some thoughts over here because this is worth looking at, that what will be the outline of the system of deen where the law of requital will be known by everyone, including the people who run the affairs of the system of deen. We know that the man-made system relies heavily on the availability of physical evidence for holding individuals responsible for their acts. The human self being inaccessible, the system does not take into account, though in some cases psychoanalysis is also carried out. And in modern court systems, some background checks are carried out and some psychiatrists are involved at times who look at the cause for committing a certain crime by the accused. The Quran has pointed out attention towards the human psyche being affected by our thoughts and deeds and has provided details of its functioning. For example, we have already discussed some of these aspects. Under Deen, both physical and cognitive aspects of the human self will be taken into account. This is absolutely essential because at a fundamental level, this will be taken into account. Those who are running the affairs, they will be fully aware of their own cognitive side as well as the physical side is fairly easy and straightforward. What is important is the thought process working behind this system of being, and that has to be based on the values of the Quran and on divine attributes. And through education, training, and the self-development, people at all levels will be helped to transform their outlook towards the seriousness of life. The concept of Allah and the life of the hereafter will form an intrinsic part of this process. And this is possible because if we keep repeating and keep drawing attention of people towards this, particularly the younger lot, our youth and children, and once they become convinced of it and see it working in their life, see how much eminent self they will have then. And then we can see that in a very short period of time, how the system of being gets fully established. Recognition of all kinds of fear and huzn, and then efforts to gradually eliminate these, and the presentation of a tentative time scale. Time scale is very important. If there is no time scale in our life, then we go into despair, we become hopeless. So it is the responsibility of the system of being that they should give some kind of a time scale. Of course, then they can make adjustments by giving the reasons for the delay in case there is a delay or there is a modification, they must give. The system has to be absolutely transparent. Defining a time scale is important as it provides hope and progress can be measured in real time. The permanent value of Yamaruna bil Maruf wa Yanhauna anil Munkar is absolutely important because with this value, every individual becomes a model of functioning under the law of requital. He becomes the ear and eyes of the system. And everyone knows that I must not, even if there is some proclivity or tendency to do something wrong, the people around them should be able to draw their attention towards it. Of course, very kindly, not harshly, because in the system of being, everyone is very kind to each other. Will help lay the foundation of every aspect of the society. In the transitory stage, efforts will be directed to identifying the wrongs in society and inviting people to start thinking rationally about the problems in society. This will be an uphill task, very challenging task initially, and one has to sit down and figure it out. When human beings become convinced of some benefit and it is made easy to acquire, they remain peaceful even if they do not agree with the system of being. Accountability at an individual level will be propagated extensively and gradually it will be made difficult for people to go against the permanent values. Where people do go against them, they will be put through education courses. Of course, there will be some punishment, but that punishment will be more directed towards reformation, towards warning people to see that if they have some element, some iota of good left within them, where they realize their own errors of judgment and see that the system of being is inviting them towards their own good. The law of requital explained through the Quranic values never lets us go astray, but only if we decide to follow it. Over here, I've drawn a small schematic just to make my presentation a bit more interesting. Over here, we can see that there are two paths, and the sun is shining, and if there's a darkness, we won't know which path goes where. And this is what does. The Quran is a light which makes our life easier by telling us which choices will take us to success, as defined by the Quran, not the success defined by the man-devised systems. At every crossroad of life, the Quran provides us with the light to make our choice easy for us. It gets us out of the darknesses of life into its light, where we can differentiate between al-haq and batil. And over here, the paths are marked, and we can put any name. Left could be batil, right could be haq. And if we are standing over here, these are clearly defined paths. A well-lit, signposted crossroad guides us to the correct physical path. It economizes our effort and saves us time. We have seen that in countries where we go and the roads are not properly marked, we can get lost. And of course, in today's world where we got a different navigation aid, we are not likely to go wrong. But previously, when these were not adequately marked, then we could get lost or we had to ask people around us. We reach our intended destination successfully, hence we avoid wasting time. The Quran defines the destination for us so that at every crossroad of our journey in the world, we make the correct decision and the outcome of our correct decision is checked through its criterion. The self so developed reaches a stage where the system of being starts to appear in the realm of possibility. And the next one is where somebody is standing over here and he's not sure which way to go. And I put down some comments over here. The essential part of this self-development is to signpost this path for others too, and not to keep it confined to our own individual self or a few selves. So important that we should come to the aid of this person, and most of the human beings haven't got the message of the Quran, the guidance of the Quran, so it is our responsibility to pass it on to as many as possible during our lifetime, because it helps to develop ourselves, and of course it helps others as well. At least they will have the choice of considering this guidance as well. Coming together by removing differences is part of this pursuit in our life. The more we signpost for others, the more we'll take a turn on this path and will realize the futility of their false pursuits in life. Any pursuit without the light of Wahi will end with death, i.e. nothing in the hereafter. This slide can also be used to illustrate the law of requital and the effect of our choices to our children. Under Surah Ibraheem, verse 1452, admonish mankind after understanding the Quran and through coming to grips with Tawheed. هذا بلاغ للناس ولينذروا به وليعلموا أنما هو إله واحد وليذكر أولو الألباب. Number of points covered in this verse, and because it is concluding the whole chapter. After outlining all this, it is stated that all these facts and events are described so that humanity can reach its desired destination in light of these. Desired destination is the one which is defined by Allah. That is Sirat al-Mustaqim. To get onto Sirat al-Mustaqim and to establish the system of Deen in this life. Because the system of Deen, which is already in full swing in the hereafter, is available to us. We don't have to go and establish it over there. People become aware how devastating is the consequence of the wrong path of life. That they come to fully comprehend this truth that in the universe, power and control is only Allah's, not anyone else's. Those who possess intellect and vision should bear these realities in mind, which are generally ignored, and learn lessons from them. And some reflections over here. In this verse, the Quran has summed it up by stating firstly that every part of this guidance is a message for the whole of mankind. So it is for whole of mankind, and the whole of mankind should remain on the background in our mind all the time as students of Quran. Not to confine ourselves to a particular piece of land, a particular society, particular nationality, particular tribe, or particular clan or party or anything. We are asked to embed it deeply in our psyche, i.e. it is not for a family or a tribe or a nation, but for humanity as a whole. Secondly, admonishment based on knowledge is part of this process of spreading the message of Allah so that mankind can understand the darknesses within which they will end up living their life. Darknesses which can only be identified and eliminated through the light of the Quran. Thirdly, informing us not to undervalue ourselves through idol worshipping. And it's important, idol worshipping is not only that these statues are some kind of stones we put in front of us. It is some of these idols get into our mind because we do not have the correct concept of Allah before us. And correct concept of Allah is extremely important because that is where we avoid doing any shirk. And we have gone over it previously as well, and more will come as we go through the Quran, which leads to not only wasting our entire life's potentials, but in this process of aimless living contribute to our own misery and to the misery of others. It is also a misery not to understand if some mishaps happen in our life and we cannot cope with it. Or we see the devastation around us and we cannot find out the reason for that, or something which is coming and we have failed to anticipate it. And these are all miseries which add to our life in case we are not on the Quran the way Quran is asking us to be. The human self needs the self of Allah with all his attributes as a model in order to bring out all the latent potentials. Very important. This is something which we should keep it in mind, that what else is within me which hasn't come out before I'm about to leave this life. The latent potentials kept within each one of us. If we don't do this, then these latent potentials will remain unexplored within us. Just imagine that we are sitting in the hereafter and then we realize, oh, I wish I had known this, I wish I had known that, and this would have come out. And I would have benefited now because I would have started this life at a far higher threshold than where I find myself now, and which was within reach as well. It is not that it was beyond our reach. There is nothing beyond our reach in this world. It doesn't matter whether we are poor or we belong to middle class or to higher class, doesn't matter. These are man-devised classes and will be buried eternally when we die, i.e. the flower whose seed never blossomed despite the availability of all means for its sowing, growing, nourishment, and manifestation of its worth within its seed. Fourthly, those of us who have decided to go all the way on this path together, Allah sums it up beautifully by stating, لِيَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And we know that the Quran has called Quran as our zikr. Surah Anbiya verse 10. The gates of knowledge and such development will keep opening if we keep pursuing it with all available means, i.e. physical and cognitive. We will only be limited by the degree of our own ambition. Our word is the arena for the manifestation of our deeds, and we should aim to leave with this satisfaction that I did my best and brought out my best as defined by the Quran within the means available to me. Finally, a quote from The Making of Humanity by Robert Briford. Every idea, every new point of view, every new procedure arises, recommends itself, proves vital and gains influence. Is selected by virtue of the fact that it is more rational, that is better adapted, more efficient than that which it seeks to supplant. The dictum that truth always triumphs, although what is true may be put down by opposition and persecution once, twice, or many times. It comes forward again and again precisely because the process of rational thought is the only constantly operating factor of growth in human affairs. Very interesting, this one, because the process of rational thought, human beings, those who think analytically and who question their environment and their own existence, will start thinking rationally at some point in time. And if they read a lot, they will enhance their rational side. And the positions to which that process leads must consequently be of necessity reached again, no matter how often they have been abandoned. So what he says is that rational thinking is the one through which human beings are progressing forward. And see how much the Quran puts emphasis on rational thinking within the permanent values. And that is something which we should keep it in mind, that the Quran enhances our ability of rational thinking in a multiplied way. In point of fact, rational development is invariably violently resisted and very generally put down and defeated for the simple reason that it is always opposed to the established views and apparent interests of the majority. Because majority is the one, we know the Quran has said, that they are only interested in passing from day to day, which is fine, that we should not be discouraged by that. The issue before us is those of us who have come to the Quran now, how to make use of the knowledge which we have from the Quran and develop ourselves so that we are not discouraged by what is going on in the world of majority. But it is at the same time inevitably predestined to prevail. So what he's saying is that rational thought will prevail, though it is a slow process, but it will keep moving forward and advancing forward. And over here, he sums it up, truth is at once sure of defeat. So if we present truth, it is sure of defeat because majority thinks that this is false. Because the majority is following that reality which has been presented to them by those people who are on the who are looking after their own interests of the land device system. But over here, the truth, of course, over here, Robert Defaults has his own truth over here, but Quran's truth, we all know that it is al-haq, and it is sure of defeat initially and of ultimate victory. And these are my comments. Human life is intended to be in black and white, i.e. there is meant to be a clear differentiation between batil and haq when viewed in the light of the Quran. It is our unbridled desires, emotions, intellect, and proclivities which contaminate it first, and then subsequent generations accept this as grave. The comprehension, and this is what happened from our initial era of Islam, that it came in its pristine form, and then gradually we gave it up, and now that Quranic Islam has more or less disappeared, and we are the ones who are trying to reignite it. The comprehension of the functioning of the law of requital and of the permanent values helps us to judge and detect the level of contamination in every sphere of land device systems. And with that, we come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing it.